were only able to do like 13 to 15 websites a year. It took a long time to do them, and it was a lot of work. And so that's not really like a great growth rate on your maintenance plans. So there were just a bunch of different reasons why it felt like the right time. Also, I love teaching. I actually, when I started my business, really wanted to launch a course like day one, but luckily I got some advice being like, why don't you wait? And that was really great advice, because this process and this system, because we did refine our web design process. I use a project management software called Wrike. Wrike is how it's spelled. And we built out a full template with dependencies. So as soon as you put that first start date in, like it just like all of it flowed through. It was really cool and really great. I was really proud of it. But so then I was like, okay, well, maybe we can turn this process into a product.
Welcome to the Web Design Business Podcast with your host, Josh Hall, helping you build a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Well, web designer friend, welcome in to a very big episode of the Web Design Business Podcast. I think this is a big one because I foresee referencing back to this many a time in the future, because we're going to dive into how to productize your web design services. Now, the reality is most web designers, and I experienced this myself, and I've overseen a lot of web designers who get to this point where you want to spend less time doing custom website work and productize your service in some way. But the question is, how do you do this? And the reality is there's a lot of different ways to productize and systematize or templatize your web design services. One way is to do it in the way of a course or a program. And that's exactly what my guest in this episode has done. Whitney Bateson, who is actually a member of my community, Web Designer Pro. So I've got to see her business model and see how she runs this thing, has done an incredible job. Like, she is a shining example of how to productize web design service in one way as a course and as an education program. And that's exactly what we're going to get into in this episode, how she's done it, how she runs it, and how she empowers her clients through her signature program, which is called the Wellness Pro website system. Now, Whitney has a niche. She serves folks in the wellness industry. So it's one way that helps productize a service. But I love this conversation for many reasons, but mainly because we get into what led her to move from custom builds to a more productized approach, how her maintenance plan recurring revenue hit a growth rate problem, which was a big factor into this pivot, how she started with refining her systems and processes first before starting to productize, how she balances ongoing support with a productized style business, and then why, if you're in this place where you're doing a lot of custom builds, why it's actually, in her mind, and I agree with this, why it's good to start custom and work on your systems first before you start to productize, because if you productize too fast, you're going to run before you walk. All that and more is covered in this one. So I want to say thank you, a big thanks to Whitney for coming on and being so open and transparent about her entire system. I mean, she really pulls the curtain back on this thing. So I really hope this helps you if you are at the place in your business where you're ready to productize in some way. Doing it as a course or a training type program may work for you. There's other ways to do it as well, but I hope this gives you some ideas. And if you do want to make a course or a training out of your system, then this is the episode for you. All the show notes and links can be found at joshhall.co/356. And if you want to connect with Whitney, go to her website, which is found at whitneybateson.com. That will be linked over at joshhall.co/356 as well. All right, here we go. Whitney, it is a dang pleasure to have you on the show. I am so impressed with your business and what you've done with both changing up your offer and the way you help clients with websites. And you've got a podcast, you're a true webpreneur, which is kind of like the fourth category that I have seen in web designers. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to just take some time to dig into how you productize your web design service in this. So first off, just a big thank you for coming on and being willing to share what's working for you.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for the confidence boost as well. You know, sometimes it's hard for us to take that step back from our businesses and be like, okay, yeah, you're doing some stuff. So I really appreciate it and glad to be here.
That's a great point. That happens for web designers, right? Where a client will see your website and be like, you are up to amazing stuff. And you're like, really? My website's horrible. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah,
I can't believe you actually contacted me. So I do think we all need that boost sometimes where it's like, yeah, I should be proud of this. Damn it. I've been working my ass off on this.
And that confidence is what helps you sell and be successful too. So like, it's really important. It's not just like an ego thing. It's like, you do need to be confident in yourself.
Well, when you came into pro, one of the first things that caught my eye, on top of just a professional presence, really good design, really clear copy and messaging, but it was your offer. I was expecting to just see web design packages and support packages, but you have, do you call it a program or a course? Is it both?
I switch between the two, but I do go to the program side because I don't want people thinking that it is just a watch, get your login details, watch on your own time, because that is definitely not what it is. So yeah.
Yeah, because you really and we'll have, of course, this linked in the show notes, but you are offering web design, but more than like a DIY course guide, like you mentioned. I mean, it really is kind of, because there's like marketing and training in that program too, right? It's really kind of an all-encompassing program to help DIYers in the wellness industry.
Yeah. Basically the program, when I first launched it, it was a 4-week program, but then, so I was like, who wants to work on their website for months and months and months? But 4 weeks was definitely too fast. But, when I approached it, I really wanted to make sure that it did cover all of the things that you needed to have on your website in order for it to be successful. Without overwhelming people, which I still probably, but they get lifetime access. So even after the 8 weeks, but basically why it's not a DIY program is that we do have all these lessons, but I have 4 different template designs built in Divi for people to choose from. And then we install those templates on WordPress, on our hosting through SiteGround. We put in their logo, we customize that design to their font and color choices, and then we hand it over to them. But then we have weekly calls, and it alternates between a call with me for like strategy and all of that, and a call with my development team to do more like technical kind of stuff. And then we have a forum as well, a community forum that people can ask questions, and, we'll go into their site if they're struggling with something. But then, we also include email marketing, a little bit of that, SEO, branding, understanding your ideal customer. What kind of sales system do you want? What kinds of services are you thinking about? What's your website strategy? So it's trying to cover a lot, and then also give that hands-on support so that when people get stuck, because there's just so many roadblocks that you can hit going through all of those things. I don't want people to feel alone and that they can't ask a question and get that guidance.
So an 8-week model seems to, especially, it makes total sense, quite frankly, with all those other components, not just the website, but almost strategy and marketing in there as well. Are they in and out after 8 weeks, or do you have any ongoing support for clients?
So what I have started doing, so this has been historically a cohort-based program where we enroll during a launch, everyone starts on the same date. Even though, like, if they enrolled at a certain time, I would give them, it would be just kind of like pre-work, which is basically starting to think about your business and get us your access details and all of that. And then we kick off on a date. And then after the end, that's it. And that's the end of the cohort. That's the end of the community. That's the end of the calls, but they would go on our maintenance plans. So they could get the support of just like little tech questions, and we'd be doing the software updates and all of that. But it definitely wasn't the level of like, okay, let's move around, the modules and the layout of your page, that like strategic guidance. So what I have been doing over the past year, though, is moving to an evergreen model, like an ever rolling enrollment. We're still doing like mainly launches at this point. We're building up the evergreen funnel right now. We also did that because we were finding that in order to have affiliates promote our program, threading the needle of like their promotional calendar being exactly aligned to when our promotional calendar is really rough. So it was, and affiliates, when I first launched, in some launches made up half of my sales. So it was significant and really valuable. But then as time went on, we had less people being able to really commit. They're like, oh, I can send out one email, and one email to a list of cold is just not going to do it. So we're moving in that direction. And one other thing that I actually have done so far in this launch, and we'll see if I continue it, is I do add another 4 weeks on. So so I'm telling people, like, the way the content rolls out and all of that, it's an 8-week kind of, sequence. But then right now I'm adding an additional 4 weeks of just additional calls and forum support. So it's like, okay, you've learned everything there is to learn. You've been implementing along the way, but you're probably behind on some things. Mm-hmm. So here's like another 4 weeks. And then now that we're Evergreen and we're always going to be, in theory, having people coming in, I am now rolling out a community membership, which is not right now at this point, it's not above and beyond what currently you get in the program, because just committing to like, okay, like, I mean, I'm in your membership and it's amazing. Like, there's so much value. Like, and so I'm like, I'm not at that level. I mean, you've built that over many years too. But I'm not ready to kind of commit to like a huge membership or anything like that. Yeah. I'm very transparent that this is just continuing the live support that you got in the program. So you can continue to ask questions in the forum. You can continue to come to the calls. You'll get 4 calls a month. And I allow them to either go month to month for that, or they can lock in a quarterly renewal and do it that way.
Is the ongoing community membership support, is that tied in with maintenance plans, or are those separate currently?
Keeping those separate.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very, very cool. Well, I want to dive into some more nitty gritty on this and how it's helping your clients, because I mean, it's a total value add for your clients, because I'm sure would they rather just have somebody build them a website, or like help them be like a marketing partner?
Right.
Especially, I know you're working with wellness brands. So I imagine there's folks on the broad spectrum of little tech savvy to probably like not tech savvy at all.
Right.
So the total sell, I would imagine, I mean, you've really come up with something really cool there. So want to get into that and how, you sold this and how it works for clients. But I have to ask, what was the jettison or trajectory of this model? Like, were you a normal web designer before? And what led to having like a program style web design service?
Yeah. So I started my web design business. I was trying different things. I thought I would help people with video editing and marketing, and, put a bunch of different things on the website back in like late 2017, early 2018 is when I launched my business and quit my full-time job and did that. And soon it became apparent, okay, websites. I enjoy websites. I love how like diverse the work is in terms of like, you're doing design, you're doing strategy, you're doing technical things. And like, I used to love arts and crafts as a kid, and I feel like websites are like digital arts and crafts, just on a more complicated, large scale. But then I started my business, and I actually started this travel program as well. So I was traveling the world with a group of other entrepreneurs and digital nomads and remote workers and all of that. And we were all meeting, and I was a solopreneur, but I was quickly learning that like, there's no way that I can scale if I'm doing all of the work. But I was really nervous to bring on anyone. But they really helped convince me. I did the math, and I was like, okay, yeah, I should definitely have some people come in. And so it was great. The people that I was traveling with, there was this one who was wonderful. He was an Aussie lawyer, but really wanted to completely pivot his career and go into web design and development. So he was one of the first people that came into my business. So basically I started building this agency where I had a designer who was also project managing the websites. I was still doing the selling and the strategy, but then I had developers, designers, and all of that. So cut to like 2021, I think it was. And like business, is up and down with any kind of web design business. But then it got slow, and I maybe didn't do the best job of like, okay, how can I keep my current contractors, and engaged instead of finding other work. So, but that's what happened. And so my project manager, who was just a rock star, really couldn't commit the time that we needed anymore. And so I had to find someone else, and it was just a real challenge. And so this is a really long, but I think just maybe important way to get to the answer. And so at that point, and I've since improved my hiring process and all of that, but I was just really like, okay, I have two choices. I can either go back to the drawing board and try and find and train a new project manager for these custom web design projects that take a ton of time, a ton of energy, a ton of coordination, hand-holding, coaching, both on your team side and the client side, or I can do something in my business to eliminate the need to have a project manager. And so that was like the first kind of impetus to, okay, well, how can we create something that, that is really driven by the client, but not in the way that they have to be like figuring out what to do next. And,
did you have the terminology of like systematizing or productizing back then, or was it just a loose idea of what that would be?
I don't think I don't think like productize was really in my like mindset or anything like that. It was just like, I want to create something that is scalable, easier to run. I could do more of them, because also I really wanted to build up my maintenance plans. But we were only able to do like 13 to 15 websites a year. It took a long time to do them, and it was a lot of work. And so that's not really like a great growth rate on your maintenance plans. So there were just a bunch of different reasons why it felt like the right time. Also, I love teaching. I actually, when I started my business, really wanted to launch a course like day one, but luckily I got some advice being like, why don't you wait? And that was really great advice, because this process and this system, because we did refine our web design process. I use a project management software called Wrike, Wrike is how it's spelled. And we built out a full template with dependencies. So as soon as you put that first start date in, like it just like all of it flowed through. It was really cool and really great. I was really proud of it. But so then I was like, okay, well, maybe we can turn this process into a product in some way and into a system. And so I went through the process with my team of listing all of the possible things that we think people would need and that we would want to do and put in there. And then how can we kind of take the parts of our process that work or that we need people to do and just kind of build them into a course.
Gotcha.
We were also finding that a lot of the clients that were coming to us, I felt didn't need like a full bespoke custom website solution. I think there are definitely businesses where it makes sense, but usually they're like further along and they have more kind of intricacies in their either their systems and the tech or their service offerings, and they have some ideas, and then they have the budget to spend on a fully bespoke customized design from the ground up. But I was just finding that with the price point and the age of the businesses that were coming to us, it felt like, okay, maybe there is a way to have some templates that can still be customized. Because at the beginning I was and I feel like I've been listening to your trainings and your podcasts and all of that. And this idea of, as a web designer, thinking that you can like replace design with templates, and this idea of like, oh, no, I could never give someone a template. Like every business is unique, every person is unique and all of that. But at the same time, we know that there are certain things that a website needs to have in order for it to drive conversions. And especially I'm niche down enough that I'm serving service-based businesses in the health and wellness space. So it's kind of pretty, similar. And honestly, the things that I focus on so much more is what's the customer journey? What's the strategy for the services that you have? How are you positioning your services? How are you writing really great copy? how are we just making sure that this is a clean design? It's easy to work around and move around. And we have like those critical things built into the site because someone who's coming to hire a dietitian for counseling services, they just want to connect with that person. So it doesn't have to necessarily have all these bells and whistles. It needs to focus on the connection.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Well, you've heard it many times on the podcast. There's nothing wrong with having a starting point or something that is common, especially if you have a few different types of templates like you have. You said you had about, like a handful of template for. I mean, unless you're doing, like you said, really advanced custom work, especially if you're niche like you are, you do know that niche really well. You do know the service pages. The reality is, like, how many custom about pages do we need? How many custom contact pages do we really need to go on? I mean, my rule of thumb is like, if you're going to customize anything, maybe the homepage, but even that's probably going to have some standard flow and layout to it. But the impetus or the emphasis on copy, messaging, strategy, those type of things are the biggies that are going to be a little more custom. Did you have your niche leading up to this? Like, did you know who you served before you started to productize and templatize this?
Yeah, I launched my business knowing who I wanted to serve because I am a dietitian myself. And I had been working not in private practice, but working in a field where we also needed design and tech and marketing support. And I was just getting really frustrated with the lack of support. And I was like, I want to make this available to more nutrition professionals. And then, so I've served dietitians for many years and then have just started to open it up a little bit more, because I do feel, granted, I don't want to say like, okay, now we're going to serve attorneys and dog walkers and all of that. But I do feel that a lot of the concepts that I teach also apply to health coaches and therapists and those kinds of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do feel like there's a broader niche there that's just because is it a lot of like, are you doing like, nutritionists? Have you worked with like yoga studios and just anything in the wellness brand? Because wellness could cover a lot, right? That really could.
And it's and sometimes it's hard to find the words to describe like a specific portion of people and professionals, right? And so I would say that I don't do as much brick and mortar. I would say I think it is more of like the virtual services, some people are doing one-on-one in person and all of that, but getting into like where they have an office and they're doing classes and all of that, I don't focus as much on that.
Gotcha. Well, and I'm glad you did spend some time sharing the evolution of like what led to this, because this idea of choosing the model of like a program style service is really important based off of personality. I think like it's good to know that you enjoy teaching and enjoy the calls, because there's a lot of different ways to roll out a web design service. And like if you don't enjoy a teaching element, or you don't enjoy whether it's ongoing or 2 to 3 months of like calls, that's going to be a very hard, or if you don't enjoy doing Q&As, like that's going to be a very difficult business you've set up for yourself. So I think the biggest lesson here so far is to know your personality type and to see like, how do you enjoy doing stuff? It's same with marketing, as we know, like some people love going to networking groups. Some people dread it. Some people love making content and being active on social media. Some people dread it. There's no right or wrong way to do marketing or to provide a service. I feel like the most important thing, especially for sustainability, as you've been a really good example of, is to figure out like, well, number one, what I want my calendar to look like, what I want my days to look like, and then how do I want to show up? Did a lot of that factor into this, or was it just kind of more natural?
Oh, yes, it factored into it because like I alluded to at the beginning, I started doing this travel when I also launched my business, and I'm still traveling. I travel all the time. I've been, I'm from the United States, but I'm in Colombia right now, in Medellin, Colombia. But I love going to Europe. I've worked from Asia before. Asia's real tough no matter what. But I wanted to have a business that was not just location independent, but time zone independent as much as possible, and minimize the calls, the need for a lot of back and forth and synchronous communication with clients, with team members. And so just by the nature of also the people that I was working with and traveling with, like none of us wanted to get on calls once a week to talk through stuff. So like we rely on our project system very much. We put those systems in place so that there is just as much automation and asynchronous communication as possible. And so that's why, like, we've got just the one call every other week with me. So, and I will admit, for a while, I did not want the rolling or the evergreen because I did not want to have to feel like I had to be on and be available for calls throughout the year. Because yeah, if I want to go to Asia, like what am I going to do then? And how am I going to manage that? But what I've realized and thought about was, okay, Whitney, you can commit to 2 calls a month. And people are understanding if I need to move the call to a different time zone after a couple months or shift things around, like that's possible and fine. So it did take some time for me to be okay with that. For a couple of years when I was rolling this out, I was like, I want to keep the calls to a minimum, and all of that. But I'm kind of overcoming that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel so much on that because I was worried. That was one of my biggest apprehensions of starting Pro, which was formerly called the Web Design Club, and doing weekly calls is I'm like, can I do a call every week? But I've realized, obviously it helps not being a digital nomad, but in my case, I would probably change that up if I was traveling a lot. But same thing, it's like I'm doing calls in one form or another at least once a week. So, and like I said, there's always, even for clients, they understand that web designers are booked out for a little while on calls. So a really, really good, important lesson to figure out, what do you want your life to look like, your calendar to look like? And then that's the really cool thing. I think that's the most exciting thing about this industry, especially now, is you can customize it to whatever works for you. And you just kind of give the parameters to clients or customers and kind of go from there. Now, I'm very curious, and this is so timely. At the time of recording this with you, I think, as you know, I'm about to kind of head into a new phase with Web Designer Pro and open up a couple lower tiers because we're nearing cap capacity here on the coaching level.
Congratulations, by the way.
Speaking of time, though, because it's like I'm at the point now where I'm like, I am dangerously close to feeling at capacity, and I'm starting to get to like 48 hours on messages with Pro members, and I'm like, I want to cut that to 24 and do more for the coaching tier. So I'm about to, issue in a new innovation here with pivoting my offer. I'm about to actually today, I'm writing my newsletter for this weekend about some tips for pivoting. So this couldn't be more timely. This really timed out. Awesome. But with that idea, when you knew that you wanted to create this system, how did you actually pivot? Did you cold turkey, like end one-off projects and fixed rates and just move into this, to the program, to the course style? What did that pivot look like for you when you changed your offer?
Yeah, great question. So I had to think back. I remember that we began building this in late 2021, and then we did our beta round in May 2022. And I think we had 1 or 2 custom clients that were finishing up around that time. And I just had to turn people away. Like, I wasn't promoting our services anymore. And there were a few people that it is painful, to be like, I don't think we're going to do custom anymore. I'm sorry. But yeah, I was burnt out. I was completely burnt out. I didn't have a project manager anymore. Because I had not been project managing website projects in such a long time, like I was kind of like allergic to doing it. So I was like, I can't, this isn't going to work. So yeah, I had to go cold turkey, but my team was still involved in designing the templates, and we had to develop them. And then one of my developers, he was the one that recorded all of the videos in the section about actually customizing your site and the Divi builder and all of that. So we had plenty of work, and I had plenty of work to give to my team leading up to that point. And, I forget what, I think I was using Octopus because I just liked Octopus for like site architecture. So I used that for mapping out like, okay, what is week 1 going to look like? And what are all the modules that I think I need, and changing them to colors once I got them recorded. And so I just had, and when I first launched, we still were doing drip. So we also had like a fairly good pre-work because we weren't ready when we like first pre-sold it too. So we kept like the pre-work. I think we had some videos that we shared with them that were outside of, we used Kajabi. And so it was outside of Kajabi while we were kind of like readying Kajabi. And then they came in And then we were still dripping the content. So like week 1, once you finish week 1, then you can go to week 2. And they knew that they were in a beta. So, they got a great price. They got a lot of support because we were trying to figure out, okay, what do you need more support with? What parts are confusing? What parts do we not need to include? But it also lit a fire under our butts to like get those finished and recorded and all of that. So.
Well, one of the reasons I asked that too is because, as anyone knows, when you pivot an offer, the scary part is if it's not like totally proven, you don't want to. I love the analogy of Tarzan swinging from vine to vine, and this applies to offers, it applies to business changes and pivots. But if you go from one solid vine, which yes, you were burned out and there were some issues with, but it was still technically solid with good leads doing one-off projects and fixed projects, you don't want to like grab a vine that's just going to go plummeting straight to the ground. So did you essentially it sounds like you gave yourself about a year to do a beta round while you were still doing some custom work. Is that right? Am I understanding that?
Yeah.
Or did you just have faith that this model
I had faith. I just really believed in it so much. I was like, this makes so much sense because I felt like, the price point was a good price point. It was like less than half, like probably a third of the price of a custom design project. And I had been building my email list, and I did build a wait list for this and was reaching out to past people who I had talked to who hadn't signed on for a custom project and seeing, hey, maybe this might be a better fit for you. The price point is here and whatever. So yeah, in this case, I, for some reason, was not risk averse. And I just was like, we're just doing it. Because I just physically could not do the custom stuff anymore.
Well, that I love hearing your perspective on that because it's exactly how I feel about the next evolution of Web Designer Pro. I'm really forced, and it sounds like you were in the same boat with a model that is time intensive. You do get to a place where there's really only a few options to be able to continue to grow it, and that is like jack up the price or scale it in a way that is just less time intensive for you, depending on what the model is. So for you, it sounds like it was basically a no-brainer offer. Like you built, which I actually think it's really good that you did the work you did leading up to that.
Yes.
To where you knew, like you knew your client, you knew the processes, you knew your tools, you had built your team. I think it would be very hard to scale the model that you've created or to even start with a modal like that without
if you hadn't done it.
Yeah. I almost feel like you just got to kind of do it that way. I mean, I keep saying like we're kind of on similar parallel paths in different parts of the industry because I felt the same way with courses. Like I couldn't launch Web Designer Pro in its form without having done one-off courses and built up a suite of courses that I know works and built up my authority in web design. So all that to say, sometimes to get to a really nice recurring revenue model, sometimes you do just have to do the dirty work and put your work boots on and get to know your business before you could roll something like this out, especially roll out with confidence when it's not technically proven.
Right. Yeah. I think, and that's one of those like huge misnomers in the like course building kind of space is just build a course. And that's what I thought, when I was starting my business, I'll build a course and then I'll sell it. And it's like, but you're not like, yeah, okay, you can do that, but you're not really going to know what to include in it. You're not going to know the pain points of your customers. And then you're going to spend so much time and energy building out that course. You're not even thinking yet about like what audience are you going to sell it to and how are you going to sell it and launch it and all of that. But you're just spending a lot of time behind the scenes building with like no data. Whereas you do, just like you said, you got to get in the trenches. Back when I was starting my career in dietetics, during my internship, I was talking to different professionals in places where I wanted to be at one point. And it was the same advice. It was like, if you want to do nutrition policy work and school nutrition, you need to first work in a school district. And so I followed that advice. And then I didn't end up doing school nutrition policy work, but it all worked out. Yeah. But you do have to get in there, as much as it can be frustrating to do. And I can be impatient, but also I want to go back to, it sounded like it was a rash decision, but I think my team had been telling me to create this kind of service for like literally a year and a half. And I was very resistant to doing it. So I had people telling me for a while that, hey, this would be a really good thing that we could offer to people. And I was just like, no, I want to do the custom. I didn't believe in it. And so it finally took me hitting my breaking point to be like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. But
Gotcha.
needed all of the learning to understand what trips customers up so that we can make sure that we build that into the program, because this is extremely like systematized to the point where, because otherwise, like, how on earth could you get someone who doesn't know web design and doesn't know WordPress at all to finish a website by themselves in 2 months with you only spending like maybe in total a couple hours helping them? That means that the support, the teaching, the education, like all needs to be so dialed in and at the right points and giving the right advice and, supporting them in the right way. And yeah, if you haven't done that and seen where those pitfalls are for people and where it's clunky on your side or it's clunky on a client side, then you're going to have those within your course. And granted, you can fix them within the course, but it just might be a little painful. And granted, if you launch something, like, I definitely recommend having a beta with only a few people in there. So like, if you do find out that, yeah, no one understands how to do this thing because actually you didn't have a module about it and everyone is messaging in the forum the same question and you're feeling a little embarrassed and all of that, at least it's only 4 or 5 people and not 20 that you're having to, which, that's what happens. It's okay. That's the whole point of a beta. I also like to say too, that, remember that people, when they sign up for any kind of program or course, they don't have endless hours to watch like just lots and lots of videos. And I think we can think as educators that we should just give them everything and that they're going to see more value if we included 20 hours of lessons and education. But it's our job to weed out and give them only the most important information and ensure that it's as time efficient for them as possible. And so I think it's really important when you're launching something too, is just like, okay, it's like going out of the house with your jewelry, like take one piece off because then it's like, then that's the right amount. So it's like, just put what you think should be in there, but also don't put everything. Wait for them to show you and tell you what's missing and let them guide a little bit of the process as well. Otherwise, if you throw everything in there, you may not even really know which parts actually are not necessary to be in there.
And even more so for somebody who wants to get to this type of model, like that's where you have got to know your client, you got to know their challenges, their needs, got to know your system, because I do think that people want to productize and build a passive or recurring subscription style service sometimes too quickly, because if you don't know things really well, it is so hard to do that effectively, or you'll just get a lot of churn. Like that's the most important thing. If you're not getting results, you'll get a lot of churn if it is something that's ongoing. So I think this is a really, really important message, because even for those who kind of follow what I teach in my web design business course, which is kind of the traditional model. Now you could still roll in a subscription style model with that, but it is more of a like manual. You can still systematize it and templatize it, but it's not really productized. There's a difference. There's a difference between systematizing your business with your processes. And then there's a difference with selling it, which is more productizing it. So those are kind of the two paths that, you learn to systematize and then you learn to productize it, which is selling it. The good news is for folks who are earlier on just learning and building their systems and choosing their tool stack, or maybe they're getting close to feeling a little more burned out, that's actually the time to look at, well, how can I take what I've done to this point and change up the offer to productize it, reduce my time. I know what works for, these 10 clients, that'll work for 100. So let's do it like that. So it's a very, very cool case study that you've went through. I really appreciate being able to dig into this here on the show, because I do think a lot of people want to get to this point, but as we've already talked about, to start at this point, I don't even know if it's possible. I'm sure there are like quote unquote turnkey solutions out there, but so those are generally the people who come to pro and are like, I tried this and it didn't work. How can I get to this point?
Yeah. And, going back to what you said about the systematizing, like that is the first step. So if this is a goal that you have, first just figure out like, okay, your client onboarding process. what are the automations going to be that are going to send them the form? How dialed in can you make that initial intake form to ensure, like, what kind of access do you need? Like, do you want to manage the domain? Do you want to just get collaborator access? What are the key domains that you want to recommend to people? What's your hosting solution? Like, how are you going to make that as easy as possible? Like, if we, and just be ruthless about being as efficient as possible, because even if you never go to where I've gone, being as efficient as possible is just going to allow you to deliver a better result to your customers and keep the costs in check. If you're like, oh, just go, I've heard people say, like, go and just buy the hosting, from whatever platform, but then you're having to learn and deal with some crappy hosts. We will not name them, but there's some bad ones out there, and it's just so frustrating. And I think the more, like, when we first launched the program, I was also adamant that I wanted Divi and Elementor. So we built templates for both. We recorded hours of videos for both. And then finally my team convinced me. They were like, you got to stop this. Like, you got to pick one. And I was like, no, I don't want to.
Was that for clients who maybe wanted like new Elementor a little bit? Like, what was the reason for potentially having two?
It's because there is someone in the industry who is really about SEO, and a lot of people follow her advice and listen to her, and she has a tutorial, and her solution is Elementor. It's not the only reason. Like, I've also enjoyed Elementor. I think that it has, obviously, like, it's different than Divi. It has some things that it can do, and I usually would recommend it to people who wanted to really focus on blogging, and maybe they were going to start having custom post types. And I just personally at the time felt Elementor like did a better job handling some of those things. And so I was like, okay, this can be that solution for those people that are really going in the blogging direction. But yeah, it's tough. Like, even now we're really diving into optimizing our templates for faster site customization setup for the clients. If we had to do that 4 times for Divi and then another 4 times for Elementor, like, oh,
right.
Yeah.
Well, what I've said for a long time is that the more tools you use, especially in the way of like a page builder or actual platform for websites, it's double everything. It's double the amount of learning. It's double the amount of teaching. It's double the amount of support. It's double the amount of team. Like, your team now suddenly needs to know 2 builders really well and keep up with. It's 2 blogs to keep up with and read and news. Like, there's double everything. So if you can get by with one, like a very, very lean and mean tool stack, that's the best. And you're an example. I mean, I know Divi takes a lot of heat. I'm sure Divi 5 is, I know you're probably excited about Divi 5, and maybe going to wait to update some sites until the first few rounds of bugs get worked out. But,
we also have to re-record all of our course videos. So, because the UI is changing, and that's going to throw people off. So,
right.
But
that's what that is the trick for anyone who wants to do this as well, is if you are doing a teaching model on tech, that is just a part of the game. I mean, I'm waiting to redo my Divi beginner course as soon as Divi 5 is officially launched. I'm going to cook through that thing. So that is the trick with that. But it's kind of just, comes with the territory especially with this model, if clients are updating their sites, which, by the way, even if, like with my model of just having like a client resources page with some tutorials, I would have had to redo those too. So that's just kind of, for anyone who, is like, oh, I don't do this. You're just going to have to do it either way. But the really cool thing about this, I actually feel like we just came up with an incredible 3-part framework for productizing web design, which is number 1, systematize. Number 2, templatize, like take what works and templatize, make it more efficient. And then 3 is to sell it and productize. So systematize, templatize, productize.
Yep.
Here we go. Whitney and I just came up with that on the spot. There's our new program we can launch together. So there we go.
I love it.
But that framework, it really does make sense. And the cool thing is, what I really wanted to get to too is, did you have any other ideas? Because it is more of a course / membership approach. Obviously, you've talked about how you've adjusted the amount of time that it takes, and now kind of switched the model going from launch, like on and off launch mode, to more of an evergreen. You're kind of working your way into that. But did you think about this any other way, or did more of a like course program style just feel like a good fit, or were there ever any other ideas on how to actually like deliver this?
I think this was pretty much it, because I knew that people needed support. I had thought about like, well, maybe we can have different tiers. We can have one where we sell just our templates by themselves and people can download them, but there's no support and whatever. And then you've got the course. And then there's another model where, hey, just give us your content and we'll put it into the site. Give us your copy and photos and all of that. But, you know, I thought that selling the templates on their own would potentially erode sales into the program. And then on the other side of it, doing a more done for you, it just would be going back to what I have been so adamant to avoid, which is really having to manage clients delivering stuff and timelines. And it's a lot of just chasing and all of that. And what I really like about the program is that the client drives it. So, hey, if it takes you 4 weeks to write your copy, then that's on you. I'm trying to help you make it as fast as possible. But if you're going to take longer to do that, then that's fine. And they have lifetime access to the videos. So it's not like, you know, they're going to lose out. It's just, if you wanted to get my input or get my team to help you with the tech stuff, you're not going to have that. But luckily now we're adding that option. So I never wanted to try and teach business owners how to be tech gurus themselves. And I really wanted to avoid that need for project management of individual client.
That makes total sense, because if you, and you explicitly say this is not like a typical DIY course, which is really smart, because I think you've kind of walked potential clients through the idea that they're going to have access to stuff and they can do some things, but you guys are the pros. They should focus on their business. You are here to help them get things going and build their business and not be a part-time web designer. I think that is what I've seen a lot of DIYer type of solutions run into trouble with is, they're taking clients and trying to make them like semi-web designers, when clients, they may think they want to have control of their website and do stuff, but about 3 weeks into it, they're like, no, you do your thing, I'll do my thing.
Yeah. And I'm of the mind as a business owner, like if you're only going to have to do one thing once, then you shouldn't have to learn it. Like you should just pay someone else to do that. So like connecting your domain to your hosting provider and doing a fresh WordPress install, that happens once. I don't know why you should spend 5 hours on a weekend in cold sweats trying to figure that out yourself. You know, just have someone do that. But then the things that you're going to have to do over and over is writing copy. You're always going to be writing copy, whether it's emails or more, you know, updating it on your site or whatever the case may be, making updates to your site, adding new pages, swapping out photos. You go and get new headshots, you know, you want to change out those photos. Like those are the kinds of things that are repeating that are going to be beneficial to your business. And those are helpful skills to learn. So I try and like divide that line of, you're going to learn the valuable stuff, and then we'll take care of the stuff that's just too technical and it's really not worth anyone's time, me trying to teach you how to do this.
That's a really, really great frame, like a great mindset of it. If it's something you're going to do once, hire it out. Like there's no reason for you. That's a wonderful, I just feel like it's a good life principle. Like don't spend months learning something that you do once. That's, my gosh, we can all think of so many things.
Yeah. I mean, even you think about like, you know, home improvements or something, it's like, okay, you're going to learn how to flip a house. It's like, well, you know, if you're just going to do that once, like, I don't know that that's really so great, you know? So we're thinking about buying stuff and it's just like, there's some things that knowledge is going to get an ROI. And then there's other things where it's just like, there's nothing else. You're now learning to be a carpenter, learning to be a web designer. And it's like, no, there's so many things in your business that you have to do and learn and figure out on a day-to-day, you know?
Case in point, a few years ago, my wife and I on our old house, we replaced, by we, I mean, the people I hired replaced our kitchen floor, and I had actually got a saw because I'm like semi-handy. I probably shouldn't be allowed to be around it now. I used to be a cabinet maker, but those skills are long gone.
Oh, okay.
I got like a saw to do the flooring myself. And then I had that same thought. I'm like, this is probably going to take me like at least a week. I know myself. I'm going to have to learn a lot of stuff. I need to get tools. Whereas if I could hire this out, yeah, it's going to be thousands of dollars, but I'll be able to have a whole extra week of work that I can make probably 3 times what I'm going to invest in just the floor. Then I have all these tools that I'm going to use once. It's the exact same situation. I'm so glad I went that route. It takes a while for people to get to this point, I think, sometimes, because especially when you're scrappy, you think I just got to do everything myself. But for DIYers, I feel like a lot of people come to this realization.
Yeah. And there's definitely things in your business, but again, like learning how to set up your email marketing and set up, send out your newsletter and all of that. It's like, we do say like hire a VA at some point, but that's something that's going to just keep coming up that you're going to have to do in your business. So it is worthwhile to learn some of those things.
I want to double click into this kind of the next evolution or innovation, I should say, that you're in right now, which is going from the launch model to more of an evergreen model. So we had a coaching call together. What was it, a couple months ago? A few months ago? My timeline always gets messy.
Not too long ago, but
yeah, you had just kind of expressed the interest of how to make this a little more ongoing and evergreen. I would imagine that this may have come down to your schedule with here's my take on this. I would think that you chose, and tell me if I'm wrong, I would think that you chose a on and off launch model because you wanted to have like 4 to 8 weeks of being on for clients and then 4 to 8 weeks of being completely off. Okay, so I got that.
Yes.
What changed? What changed about that? Was there just a need of more ongoing support? What was the impetus of you thinking like maybe this could be evergreen or more ongoing in a controlled way, as long as it's not breaking out of the 2 calls a month kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. Like over the past 2 years, I really just kind of didn't want to work. Like I was feeling pretty burnt out in my business. I was just feeling like, okay, I don't know how much more I want to work. And this is just kind of like pulling teeth. My passion for it had gone a little bit. And so I was just kind of waiting for it to come back. I mean, I was trying to get it back, but it just wasn't coming. But it finally did start coming back. And one of the realizations also was just when I realized that when I went on a coaching call with my clients, after that call, I felt so energized and so useful. But when I wasn't talking to anyone, I did not feel like I had anything to offer anyone ever. Like, cause you're just alone with your thoughts. Like no one is asking you questions. You're not giving really any advice or anything like that. And that's another reason that I finally launched the podcast too, was because I realized that the more I'm talking and giving advice and all of that, I'm keeping that confidence in myself up. I'm keeping that tool sharp, and it's okay. And so I just really, honestly, a lot of it was about just my passion coming back a bit. And then also looking at the facts that like, okay, I've had one client in my business, more on a consulting level, where I used to have calls once a week. And I did that for years. And I was like, well, I survived that. So if I can do a call every other week, I think I'll be okay. So yeah, just being like honest, like it's not that much, Whitney. And I had team members too. So, I'm definitely not doing any of this alone. I have someone on my team now who's monitoring the forum all the time, and she's doing as many question answers as possible. And she just sends me the questions that I need to answer. So just not having to be constantly checking the forum every day and being like, oh, I have it pop up into a folder, not my main inbox folder, but I do see like an unread message come up. I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait to see, if she responds to her, if she lets me know, like maybe I'll go in and look if I need to, but she's on top of it. So I think just building in some systems too, to make sure that it isn't overwhelming me. If I see a lot of messages coming in from a lot of different directions, I just start feeling really stressed and pulled. And I don't love that. So how how can we like build it and get the right support to make it feel good and aligned with kind of like how I like to work and my triggers and all that.
Do you have a wins and successes style place in your membership, in your community for clients?
I don't, but that's a really great idea.
I knew we were going to, I told myself, don't coach too much on a podcast interview, but that's going to be my coaching tip for you, Whitney.
Okay.
Look, you're a member of Pro, so I'll tell you anyway.
Yeah.
I really recommend that because you're seeing it with the calls that you're doing. I love that you said that because we sometimes think that we want to have like silence. And I feel like our personalities are probably similar to where, are you somewhat extroverted, like do you go to a party and feel pretty good, or are you introvert, extrovert? Where you fall?
Yeah, it's a very strange dynamic. Like if I'm in a good like setting with like people I know and it's fun, like then I'm having a great time. But if I'm like at a conference, I loathe going to conferences.
The reason I asked that is because by you saying you enjoyed the coaching call and you feel like you're useful, and most importantly, you feel like you probably get real-time feedback on the work that you're doing and you're seeing some impact. Like, for folks who retreat and go hermit style and don't get real interaction from clients, I actually think that's extremely detrimental, whether you're introverted or extroverted. I think that's a big problem that a lot of web designers do. It's still one reason why I push web designers to at least do something where you're talking to clients. If it's like a online membership monthly call, if it is ideally getting out to a networking event or even events every once in a while, or checking with your clients, do something to get that real feedback, because we are our own worst enemies with our thoughts. Because if you don't talk to anyone for a month or two, you might be like, oh my God, have I lost it? Our client's not happy.
Right.
But if you're not giving them a forum to talk to you, then you're not going to know. So all that to say, I think it's really important to have, whether it's weekly or monthly, some sort of touch point with clients. And if you can get real-time feedback, the reason I mentioned the wins and successes forum is because that's my absolute favorite part of Pro. Is when I get so excited when I see a win and a success, because I see what's working. They might mention something in my courses or a coaching call, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all the hard work is working. It's working.
Right.
And I know it works, but we all need to be reassured, especially when the industry changes like it does. You want to be reassured that what you're doing is working. So I would definitely recommend doing that, especially since your clients are similar. I actually think you're in a unique position to where you could almost start to foster, maybe you're already doing this or it's happening organically. Like, since you are working with wellness pros, I imagine they can probably start learning from each other. And if you have a wins and successes forum where people share something that you did on the website, or they landed, they did a marketing push that worked, or boost their email list, other clients are going to be like, ooh, I might try that too. You didn't need to do a dang thing. It's just in the wins and successes column. And then that's almost like a little mini training area for you, that you can be like, this worked for Lisa, this worked for Diane, and then push it out to everybody.
I love it. That's such a great idea. Yeah. I'm definitely going to do it and add it, and I love it. And then I just think too, like, one of the most valuable things I think that we've covered is that having calls and conversations with clients isn't just about serving them. It serves you too. And I don't think that occurred to me in the past. Like, I was very much about protecting my time and like, well, I don't want to be offering like quarterly calls. What am I going to talk about? Like, all of this. And it's like, this is actually better for us as the business owner too, in ways that are just not obvious, especially if you are a little bit more introverted and you want that quiet time for yourself and you don't want to have a lot of calls in your calendar. It's like, but it actually does things subconsciously that, like, I had no idea. So
that's a good point too. And calls are not always sales calls. I think that's the place we mostly all go to is like, I have a call, it's a sales call. Well, actually, no, maybe you have a call with a recurring client. There's no sales about it. They're just talking about strategy or whatever that looks like. And you actually may learn a lot. And it's actually working on the business. It could almost be like a business refining call. You can work on your systems or your templates based off of what you learned from that call. So there's another quote for the day. Not all calls are sales calls.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you can use those ideas for improving the copy on your website or, adding a new bullet point that people might have, like just struggles with, or it's a blog post idea. Like, yeah, it's something I tell my clients too. It's like every interaction that you have with your customers, either a potential customer or a current one, is just this other opportunity to be learning and figuring out how they describe their problems and what's going on. And then, yeah, things that you could be improving in your own business to support them better. Like it's all learning. And it can be tough when we're in the moment to recognize that like, oh, this call, I could be learning some things from it because we're so focused on serving and giving and being present and all of that. But even just taking a moment to like reflect like, oh yeah, that was something that I should definitely talk about at some point. Put it in my newsletter, put it in your blog, whatever the case is.
It's also another, I could dedicate a whole episode to why anyone should have some sort of like wins and successes or testimonial collection type of thing, especially for you. If you have a forum where people can just post their wins, that is literally like, you don't need to guess or theorize or do market research. It's like, there it is.
Right.
This is what's working today. So let's stick with that. And they may come up with a whole new thing. We're like, oh yeah, maybe we should add a module on that or a lesson on that, or maybe that is a common pain point. Yeah. So I love that. And for those who don't have like a customer community or a customer membership, we might frame it as, you could still do this with check-ins with clients. You could say, you could do a push on email and just say like, clients, share a recent win that you got from your website. And then you could kick that out as case studies or or social media posts, a lot of different ways to go it, but definitely having some ongoing source of wins, I think is big for everybody. Well, Whitney, this has been awesome. I have one final, two final questions real quick. The one thing I don't want to leave us on is, how did you know when you're thinking about marketing and showing your clients how to use their websites, where did you draw the line with marketing? Because are people asking you to do their social media, to run ads for them? Like, where did you know where to draw the line with marketing?
Yeah. I mean, basically we cover email marketing, just the surface of it, how to set up a lead magnet, what's a welcome sequence, what are the basics of setting up your email marketing platform, what are the benefits of email marketing. But then at the end, I talk about ways to drive traffic to your site. And, we talk about like just SEO, which is, slow burn marketing, but, we just don't cover those other things. And I think we make it pretty clear in our sales page. And when I'm doing my masterclass and talking about the different things that people try and what the solution is I don't say that social media is a solution. Obviously people can use it and all of that, and it can be very powerful, but I don't put it in my like solution stack.
Okay.
Because then that would imply that I'm going to help you with that. And in the past, we tried offering some marketing packages and services, and those were I just like things to be super automated and systematized.
Whole different business model. It's not the wellness marketing system. It's the wellness website system. But I think probably for a reason, like you do some marketing, but man, that is like, there really is such a big difference in every industry with web and utilizing the website, right? And doing a little bit of marketing versus like full on digital marketing, because that's a can of worms that most web designers are just not ready to get into. You almost have to commit to being a digital marketing agency if you're going to go into that realm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because each of them is so deep. If you're going to go into email marketing, and you could spend forever, people have whole businesses about that, or ads or social media and all the different platforms. It's just so much to cover. And yeah, it is. I think it's a different business model. And also I try and search for how can I make it easier for my customers, because I know that most of my customers are not necessarily wanting to pay for like a custom solution. And I know that it took me years to build up the process to deliver websites in an efficient and streamlined way. I would want whatever, if I were to sell something next, to also have a process. And so it's going to take me years to figure that out. And so I'm always thinking about like, well, how can I make it easier for them? And am just like, that's just a lot of work and I'm just going to focus on this.
What keeps you going? You've been doing this for a long time. I know you said you've had different periods of like feeling a little burned out or feeling like, you've lost a little passion, which I think is just common as an entrepreneur. You're doing the same thing a lot.
Yeah.
You need to get a jolt. Have you had any like recent moments or times where you did get that boost? Was it a coaching call? I imagine joining Web Designer Pro was the best thing, but aside from that, honestly, like what else has been like, what have given you some of those boosts that you needed?
I think what's exciting to me is implementing new marketing and sales tactics in my own business. And so getting to work on new projects and just discover new things. It's just fun for me to keep going and like setting up an evergreen funnel and building my new welcome sequence, even though it's been taking a lot of time. I'm like embarrassed to my team being like, yeah, still working on it, but it's 15 emails long. So it's like, okay. I feel justified at the same time.
If it makes you feel any better, Whitney, I told myself I would have one ready for the launch of 2.0. And I just haven't felt good about it. So I'm like, I'm going to wait. Like there's no pressure to do it right away. I'm not doing like a huge launch for 2.0. It's just going to be kind of soft and slow and steady. So I'll do the sequence when it feels natural for me.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things. But also like after joining Pro has been super helpful because, and I think it's one of those things too, where it's like, you don't necessarily need to take everything in. It's a buffet and you get to choose what's going to help you. And so learning about other businesses that have also productized and systematized really inspired me. And then being on our call a few months ago, and I dove in hard into optimizing our templates and our site setup process because I was like, these are taking way too long. It's a bottleneck. It is going to hold us back from scaling. It is too dependent on team members and their skills, unique skill sets and all of that. And so I just dove into it. And that's the kind of work that I really love, is like just trying to figure out like how to make things more streamlined and effective and building the systems. So just, tinkering, I guess, in the business is enjoyable to me. And then also the other side is that I just keep seeing my clients feel so confident with their businesses and their websites and telling me that they're so happy that they found my service and it's just perfect for them. And so continuing to get that feedback makes me feel like, okay, this is still something that's valuable to people. It's not for everyone. There's custom sites out there. There's DIY out there. That this is not it. But for the people that it is a fit for, they appreciate it so much. And then they're able to like keep their businesses moving and growing. And that just makes me feel good. And I don't right now, because I am so focused on like systems and efficiency, I don't really want to be expanding out and adding a lot of other complexity. I'm pretty focused on like, we're just going to keep making this program the best it can be. And even every year, every 6 months, we're doing something to make it better. And then just continuing to grow our maintenance and just serve people and try and make it the best possible service for them. So. Yeah,
no, it's awesome. Such good tips there. I do have one final question for you, but where would you like folks to go to check this out? I know you're not here on the podcast, like sell a program to web designers. I appreciate you being willing to come on and just share what's working for you and really be a good beacon of hope and light for folks who do want to productize eventually. This is an envious system. You are at I don't know if you realize this, but you are at a place where hundreds of thousands of web designers are probably killed to get to. So, where would you like folks to go if they do want to check this out? I know you have a podcast too now. So where should we go?
Yeah. So my podcast is The Growth Show with Whitney Bateson. So you can find that anywhere you find your podcasts. And my website is whitneybateson.com. You will see the podcast on there. You'll also see the waitlist for our course. So if you just kind of want to be a fly on the wall of one of my launches, and because we do have, depending on when this drops, but we're doing Evergreen. So if you want to kind of just see what's going on, feel free to go. You can also go to wellnessprowebsite.com. That'll take you to the same spot just to see kind of what's involved.
Yeah. Will this be your last launch in December?
So we are still going to do live launches in addition to the Evergreen.
Okay.
So we'll eventually try and phase out the live launches, but I'm still okay with them. And that's another thing where it's like, how do I feel? I feel okay with them for right now.
Okay.
So we're
Cool.
going to have another one in February. But in the meantime, we're doing some JV launches, having people do their own like launches of our program just to their audience. We're going to do a Black Friday sale, which by the time this airs, hopefully it went well.
Yeah.
So we're doing some different things. So
cool. Yeah, I was going to say, because I know launches are exhausting.
Yes.
So yeah, that's not, like most people, unless they go the Amy Porterfield route, which is just like one big launch a year, and then have other programs evergreen. Man, launches are exhausting. So, but if you feel good, you're doing it in a sustainable way, then I imagine you could probably marry the two, and then get the evergreen going, and then switch to that model, which I've learned to love personally. If I can give you any inspiration on having an evergreen model, because I don't launch pro in any way, and I stopped launching courses. It's just freaking awesome. Like, I'd rather just see the numbers go up and up and up every month, and just enjoy a sustainable pace and see people win.
Just serve your customers.
Yep, that's the goal.
No, I agree. One of the reasons of going evergreen too is just because launches were also just putting so many eggs in one basket. I launched 3 times a year, but it was just this. And basically the reason that we're doing a sale is because I looked at the numbers of this year and I'm like, these launches didn't go as well as I would have liked. And
I do wonder if there's launch fatigue. Yeah.
It's possible, and also it's like the time of year, and like, who knows, the other things that have been going around and on in the United States, causing people to make certain decisions or not make decisions in their business, waiting for things. So, it's anyone's guess.
We just talked about this in a recent coaching call. Election season is always, it affects every market. Like, most people are just holding on to their wallets generally before or after an election. So that can be, there's a lot of different factors in that. But I think you're in a really good place. It's cool to see how you've really tinkered and evolved your offers and pivoted everything you've done. And then I think the next step will be, just really clarifying, like, it's almost just your sales. Now it's just your offers on how how and when you're doing them, and just keeping that sustainable. Makes a lot of sense with your affiliate partners, though. I will say that anyone who has affiliates, it's like, if you have an open and closed model, you're kind of screwed for every other period like that. I have some colleagues who have open and closed courses, and I'm like, can you please just keep your courses open? Because I can't put you on my recommendations page.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We have people. Yeah. You can't just put them on a blog post and have it always going. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, no one's going to be like, ooh, I can't wait to learn this in 4 months. Like, no, they want to learn it now if they're ready. So
exactly. Yeah. It's tough for affiliates, tough for customers. And one other thing that I'm working on too is maybe some downsells and some low ticket offers. So I will say that is something we're looking at. I still don't know if I'm ever going to have anything that's like after the Wellness Pro system. We'll see about that. But still, because right now this is the only offer. This is the only way for people to work with us. And in the past, we had done a downsell where it was a version of the course just without the live calls and forum. But I didn't think people got as great a result as if they were getting our support, and they weren't as necessarily bought in, and they still ask questions, even though, like we said, no questions, but it's like, you don't want to leave them high and dry. So also definitely looking at like, just, that evolution of what products, the product suite. So it's another.
Let's do a round project. 2. I'm sure everyone would love to hear a round 2 in a year or so, and hear how the next evolution is. I'm very curious, and I'm so glad you're in pro with me. I love having you in pro. You're such a great example for folks to productize and have a really cool spot to get to that's based off of your personality and your life goal, your season of life, and you're a digital nomad where some are at home. Like, there's so many ways to go about this. So it's really cool. So appreciate you being a member, and I appreciate you sharing. My last quick question for somebody who wants to productize and get to this point, but they're just in the weeds of, building their business. Can you offer just like one little, what would you recommend focusing on for somebody who wants to get here, but maybe they're in systematizing mode? Like, what did Whitney need to hear a year before you productize stuff?
I mean, I think getting your thoughts down on paper so you can at least feel like you're making progress and it's not just stuck in your head, and you kind of can start seeing what could be. So just start outlining what you would put in it, and all the questions that you still need to answer. How would they do this? How would I make this work? And I think also making sure you're building your audience, building your email list, because if you do want to launch the product and sell the product, you need people to sell it to. So I think it's never too early or too late to be building your email list. But I would say that if you're feeling impatient, if you're feeling frustrated that like, I want to do this thing, but I'm busy building websites and serving clients, it's like, just give yourself, just scratch. I had pieces of paper that I would just like, especially on airplane rides, it was just a vacuum, so I could really like get all my thoughts down, just so that you can start feeling like, okay, at least there is this outlet for me to put these ideas and start figuring out, okay, what would the next step look like? What do I need? Maybe you do want to hire some people to help you do some of the stuff. I don't know, but you need to know what you need first. So.
Wonderful. Whitney, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this. Like I said, pumped for round 2.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josh. This was a lot of fun.
Well, my friends, cheers to systematizing, productizing, templatizing in some way. Again, there are many of you who might be ready to do this right now, but if you're earlier on in your journey, enjoy the journey. Enjoy doing the custom work and having less clients, focus on quality over quantity, and get your business to the place where you're ready to eventually productize it, just like Whitney did. Again, there's a ton of different ways to go about it. Doing it as a course or a program is one way. It's not the right or wrong way. It's just one way to do it. So if this is you, I hope this has helped. If you've made it to this point in the episode, you're probably quite serious about this. So if you are serious about productizing your web design business and you would like to get my insight and maybe even connect with Whitney directly, you can do that when you join my community, Web Designer Pro. Whitney is currently an active member of Web Designer Pro. It is open to you. And again, we have multiple levels now. If you are starting, you just want to go through my courses, that is available for you in the courses tier for Web Designer Pro. You can join the courses and get the community aspects in the middle of the community tier. And if you want to get my insight directly for personal coaching, we do have a few spots available still right now in the coaching level, which gives you direct DM access to me, just like Whitney has, and access to our weekly coaching calls, which have been loads of fun recently. So I encourage you to check that out at any tier that works for you. You can go to webdesignerpro.com for that. And again, the show notes for this episode are going to be found at joshhall.co/356 to get all the links that we mentioned in this episode. Again, cheers, friends. Can't wait to see how you implement this into your business. Leave us a comment if you would. I'm sure Whitney would love to hear from you, apart from connecting with her website and her social media. Again, joshhall.co/356 is where all the show notes for this one will be found. So we'll see you over there. Stay subscribed. Some awesome ones ahead as we end the year here in 24. We're gonna do some fun episodes, by the way. We're gonna maybe kick out a couple episodes that are a little more personal and just kind of hang out time with you here as we wrap up this year and we head into 2025. All right, friends, I will see you on the next episode.